So now there's a lot of people who get mad about Islamic radicals, as they should. I mean, look at the Islamic radicals in Iraq now. They're cutting people's hands off, their heads off, etc. I mean, killing people based on religious beliefs, that's crazy, right? I mean, good Christians in this country would, of course, never believe that. So what's weird is this gentleman named Scott Esk, who is actually running for the state legislature in Oklahoma, apparently believes we should stone homosexuals to death. I'm sure the Taliban would agree. I'm not even sure they're that extreme in the Taliban. So you think, now come on, he intimated it, but he didn't mean it. He quoted the Bible, but not specifically. Well, let's go to his Facebook post. Now, this is not from like 1986 or anything like this. This is from last year. So let me read it to you. Adam asked about fitness to judge others. He's responding to someone on Facebook. He says, that right was given in verses like Leviticus 20:13. Men were commanded to put guilty parties to death who were guilty of certain acts, like homosexuality. Laws to put people to death who were guilty of such practices have been in existence in various countries in Jesus' time, and afterwards too. If men wink at such perversions, God may have no choice than to judge such nations with calamities. So he's saying, look, if we don't execute the gays, God will, bring calamities down on us. So what can we do? I mean, we're choiceless, God is choiceless. I guess we got to kill the gays. Now, so he writes that in one post, and the guy that he's been arguing with says, I mean, you don't mean that, right? I mean, so he jokes back at him. I mean, incredulous more than anything else. Adam Bates says, so just to be clear, you think we should execute homosexuals, presumably by stoning, and to think people are worried about the Muslims taking over. Ha ha. Now, you would think at this point, that's when Scott S. would say, no, well, I mean, that's not exactly what I mean. But no, he says, I think we would be totally in the right to do it. That goes against some parts of libertarianism, I realize. He calls himself a libertarian. And I'm largely a libertarian, but ignoring as a nation things that are worthy of death is very remiss. So being gay is worthy of death. And Adam Bates said, you mean death by stoning? He said, yes, we would be remiss in not doing that. Now tell me again about Islamic radicals. Oh, believe me, they exist. We all know it. You think Christian radicals don't exist? This guy's running for the state legislature. Gee, I wonder which parties he's in. Can't quite figure it out. Republican. Interesting. Okay. Then, now, when asked further about this, further down the post, he says, I never said I would author legislation to put homosexuals to death, but I didn't have a problem with it. Oh, well, is he not merciful? He wouldn't actually write the legislation, but he'd be A-OK with legislation to stone gays to death in Oklahoma. No, but Christians would never be radical, right? Now, he's asked by the More Daily today. He says, I mean, look, that was last year. You're running for state legislature. You've had time to rethink this insane position. He doesn't think it's that insane. He says, what I will tell you right now is that was done in the Old Testament under a law that came directly from God, and that was just. I have no plans to reinstitute that in Oklahoma law. I have some very huge moral misgivings about those kinds of sins and think those kinds of sins do not do our country any good. He's like, look, that's not going to be the first piece of legislation I author, but if I make it into the Oklahoma State Legislature, I would be supportive because I think it's just of stoning gays to death. You see how bad Iran is? You see how bad the Taliban in Afghanistan is? But our Christian fundamentalists who believe in the literal word of the Bible, no, they're not radical. But the thing is that, unfortunately, the really sick part is it does write that in the Bible. By the way, you should also execute your kids if they ever talk back to you. Have you all executed your kids if they talk back to you? Because I'm sure none of your kids have ever talked back to you, right? Would any kid remain alive? No, literal interpretation of the Bible. It says in the Bible, it must be true and it must be just. But our fundamentalists are not as radical, right, as their fundamentalists. By the way, one of them is a former general, General Boykin, who goes around saying that Jesus is going to come back with an AR-15 and that he's going to mow everyone down. He says, and there's a verse in the Bible where Jesus will come back with a sword. So he says we should get ready by grabbing all our weapons. But our fundamentalists are nowhere near as bad as their fundamentalists, right? It's just that they don't have the opportunity yet. Give Scott Esk a chance and see the horrific things he could do.